Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you listen to this podcast. Welcome to the Human Results Podcast. Today we have a very special guest on. We have Mr. Shaun Philpott from Copia Wealth and Tax. But as always, my co-host Alasdair. Good afternoon, Alasdair. How are we?
Afternoon, Ben. Fine, thank you.
Good stuff. And good afternoon, Shaun, a regular on Little Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Despite everything, we still keep smiling.
How much reading have you had to do this week on the new information that's come out?
Let's not go there.
Okay, great stuff.
Fair amount, let's just say. A fair amount, yes.
And that'll be out of date by when? Wednesday next week?
Well, who knows? Could be Monday.
And of course, Alasdair, it was all introduced to save staff, to keep people in positions, wasn't it? To make your life as a HR consultant a little bit easier.
Certainly the latest announcements last night have probably changed a few employers' minds, maybe, and certainly in the pub sector, for example. I think a lot of employers have been just waking up to the fact that the new scheme, as was couched in the terms of, with the employers paying what I think was going to work out at something like 55% or so for an employee to work 30%. There was not going to be many posts, I think, that scheme was going to really save. It was going to be desperately difficult and expensive for employers. I think some of the slightly better paid, more skilled members of staff, like chefs, for example, it might have saved a few jobs in that regard. I'm still trying to get my head around the latest tweak to it, but on the face of it, first blush from last night, it looks considerably better. There's going to be obviously different variances with the different tiers operating as well, as regions and cities and towns go from tier 1 to 2 to 3. The level of financial assistance and the grants being paid out to the likes of metropolitan areas like Manchester and Merseyside. There's going to be local variances to what might be available by way of additional grants. The latest regulations that have been published, the amendments to the job support scheme, on the face of it, that's certainly a big improvement. As I'm interpreting it, employees will now need to work at least 20%, not 33 1/3% of their normal hours, normal rates of pay, and then 2/3 of that of their pay paid for hours that they don't work. So the government top up, as I understand it, was going to be about 61% or so now, which is a huge improvement. Employers will have to pay pension contributions and national insurance on it, but it's a significant improvement from the 50-50 split that we were looking at. I'll have more details of that by early next week.
Yeah. And what's the employer saying at the moment, Alasdair? Is it giving them a bit more hope that they can keep the people on?
I've not spoken to anybody this morning as yet. I'm trying to get something out to clients. I got something out yesterday when the announcement was made, and we'll see. But yes, I think it's on the face of it, it looks a lot better. I think employers will look more closely at it.
And do you think long term this is going to benefit? Because obviously the worry at the moment is that this is a short term measure and that people are going to keep people on while they're being supported by the government. But as soon as that support is taken away entirely, what position are they going to be in?
Well, Ben, so much is going to depend on what the economy's doing, isn't it? I read this morning that September's retail figures had surprised people. They were quite buoyant. If you drive through the streets of Shrewsbury, like I did on Wednesday night when I went to pick my daughter up, quite a lot of the pubs and restaurants were fairly busy. I'm an optimist. If people are in work, then they're still seem to. The housing market's clearly been very buoyant recently with the holiday from stamp duty up to £500,000 on property. That's made a huge difference to house markets moving. I think the problem there at the moment is, speaking to a surveyor yesterday, is mortgage companies are very slow in dealing with the volume, and also very, very cautious on the valuations on properties. Asking their surveyors to have a very close look at the deal, at the value of the property that they're lending against, and I'm guessing especially where deposits are comparatively small. The bigger risk is on the house purchaser. If they're putting down at least a 30% or more deposit, the risk is largely theirs. But the government is keen to see 5% mortgages and things coming back into prevalence, which they're out of favour at the moment with lenders. But that's going to be an issue. So I don't know, Ben. I'm not an economist. Those clients that are not in hospitality or events are reasonably okay, I would say, at the moment. And without doubt, the job retention scheme has played a huge part in that through the difficult times. But once they got back, increasingly they're coming back. So the employers are, yes, they've had to make difficult decisions, but they've not been as drastic as they may have been.
Which is encouraging.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to Shaun in a moment on the finance situation. But of course, we are about to enter Christmas, and it's a worrying time for a lot of people, isn't it, as we enter Christmas? And I'm guessing that a lot of your clients are trying to look after people into that period. Not that they don't all the time, but the last thing you want to be doing in November and December is laying people off, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And maybe the change to the job retention scheme, job support scheme that's now been published, that might well help employers put off the evil day. January, February, I suspect, will be harder, but maybe they'll give this a go. It'll depend very much on their own circumstances.
When do you see the crisis point? Because we all thought it'd be end of October, but now there just seems to be more support there. Do we see any date in time which is the crisis point, or are we just taking it day by day?
I think taking it day by day. I think if there's going to be a crisis point, it's going to be early in the new year. That could be inflamed by a lack of a deal on Brexit, maybe. That might have a big impact. Certainly in certain sectors, the car manufacture and the things that rely on assembly plants and what have you. I can imagine that would be a disruptive and damaging, on top of what is a very difficult situation with the pandemic. So mid-January onwards will be a big issue. I think a lot of employers, if they can afford to hang on and ride it out, will continue to do so until after Christmas. But then, if there's any end to an artificial situation, it's going to be then, I would think.
And have you seen any rising clients in a particular sector at the moment from yourself, or any advice going to a certain sector? Obviously events, but anything else at the moment?
I'm relieved to say that most of my clients, spread across a lot of sectors, are reasonably okay. Manufacturing continues. Metal fabricating and areas like domiciliary care and care homes and things continue to be busy. Some companies are reporting record turnover in recent months. Very much depends on the sector. I'm not seeing any real pattern apart from the obvious decimation of hospitality and events. That's understandable. But I've not seen much else. We're quite busy with redundancies in August and into September, but actually that's calmed down. I think a lot of that's been done.
To sum up, what do you tell your clients at the moment?
Well, keep calm and soldier on. What can you do, Ben? I think it's been a long year, and I think we're all very jaded by the whole experience. Just got to keep carrying on. A lot of businesses are doing just that, and as I said earlier, some are doing remarkably well. Not just given the circumstances. Some are just doing remarkably well. It varies from sector to sector, and even those that are doing very well have still had people on furlough right up to now. The worry is for them is that I suspect in many cases there'll be people who are less experienced, less well qualified, often therefore younger. We will see some more blood on the carpet with redundancies in those areas, but that hasn't necessarily impacted on the overall success of businesses. I just think it's going to be individual personal difficulty and hardship. So I hope that we see a good uptake on schemes such as Kickstart coming through, having put in myself for one actually, but it's all a bit slow at the moment, but it's early days.
I just think we need to clarify though, you're not applying for the Kickstart scheme yourself because it's 16 to 20.
No, I'm a little long in the tooth now for myself. Yes, thank you very much.
However, Shaun, finances. On the finance side, where are you seeing the squeeze at the moment, and where are you seeing the uptake on some of these?
The thing is, it's a very mixed picture. It's a bit like COVID, really, with it being all over the place geographically. It's bad in some areas, it's not so bad in others. I think it's similar in terms of its impact on business. So, my manufacturing clients seem pretty happy at the moment that things are not bad. Obviously, they're not back to normal. But they're not really bad. But then anyone in the events industry, hospitality industry, obviously is having a problem at the moment more than others. I think the ones that have got left out really badly is the events industry. You know, particularly if you're a supplier to the events industry, because you're just not really getting any help. I know one of my clients is seriously thinking about just cocooning the business completely for the time being, because you just can't survive with what he's getting at the moment. But generally, you know, it's not too bad. You know, people are just getting on with it. So, I mean, obviously, people aren't doing as well as they were, but people are managing to get through generally. But certain industries, I think, yeah, they've had to make the changes they made in the last few days, because otherwise, I think there would have been a whole raft of people losing their jobs before Christmas. And then they've also put some grants in as well to help with fixed costs. Again, that's very much towards the hospitality industry. If you sort of have to close your premises, you know, you'll get a bit of support with that. But it's a mixed picture. And then, you know, on the other hand, I've got a few clients who are looking to take advantage of these schemes to take on new people. So, you know, it's not all bad news, but it is very mixed. But I think the overall message is that, you know, the economy's not back to where it was, and it's going to be some time before it is.
And of course, the difficulty is now, I know, Alasdair, our next podcast is on a legal update, but the problem is that legal update could only be relevant for a very short time currently, because things are changing.
Well, things are, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You see the political wrangling and the scrapping with the likes of Andy Burnham. You know, you see separate settlements being done with South Yorkshire, and other areas are entering lockdown, increased lockdown restrictions now. Another 6 million or so people have entered tighter restrictions from today. So, you know, Wales, 6 o'clock tonight. Each area is differing, isn't it? And what might be available in one area. Obviously, the job support scheme is national, but there are local variations of other sorts of business grants that might be available for certain sectors that are affected the most, such as hospitality and things. So that's going to take some working out. It's hard to react to quickly enough at the moment.
And of course, as well, Shaun, we're about to try and look forward to the November financial statement. Is there any need for one, or are we just going off what happens day by day? I mean, if he does plan for this financial statement he's announced in November, how long is it going to be relevant for?
I don't think he knows what to do, to be honest. I mean, obviously, he originally had a full budget organised for November, and then he sort of pulled it. And I guess it wasn't really the right time to do it, because there's so much uncertainty about what was going to happen. He couldn't really come up with a proper strategy. And I guess we're still in that situation now, really. I mean, I don't think he's going to have a full picture on this until into the new year. I mean, it's like these, you know, the job support scheme, for instance, you know, they're running that for potentially 6 months from November. So that's going to take us well into next year while that's still up and around. And they obviously feel that's going to be needed. So there's a lot to think about. And I think he's in a very difficult situation. I mean, he's having to spend an awful lot of money, and obviously, at some point, there's got to be a reckoning on that. But nobody at the moment wants to hear about tax increases. So I think he'll lay off on that probably as long as he can get away with it, because it might be the final straw for some people. And as Alasdair said, you know, earlier, you know, even if people are keeping the job, the fact of the matter is with these schemes, you know, they are losing a fair proportion of their normal income. Not easy to survive on that, you know. I mean, some people it's not a problem to lose 20-30% of your income. For other people, it's the difference between paying the electricity bill and not paying the electricity bill. But how much can they do? Can they really afford to pay any more? Because we're all going to end up paying for it in the end. So it's a horrible situation. It really is.
As always, you do need experts around you. So please do contact Alasdair at Human Results and Shaun at Copia Wealth and Tax for the expert advice that you need during this period. Gents, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as always, stay safe.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for listening.